5 keys to parenting your son successfully in wrestling. 1, have realistic expectations. You know, if your son's a high school junior and he's a second-year wrestler, he's probably not going to beat the wrestler who's wrestled year-round for 10 years. It's just not going to happen. Secondly, if your son's a 8th grader and he's still a short, chubby kid with all of his body fat, he might not beat the kid who is a foot taller, muscular, with hair all over him. Even if that other wrestler is newer to the sport, don't get frustrated. Your son just doesn't have the maturity yet. It's part of the deal. Sometimes you have to say, hey, we're on a 2-year course here. 2 years from now, you're going to be in a position to meet your goals. It's not easy to do, especially if your teammates or maybe your friend's son, he's having this success now. It's just part of life. There's nothing we can do about it, and there's nothing any coach can do about it. So be very realistic about where your son's at and progress him forward. As long as he's moving forward, he's having success. Another thing is style. Don't try to push a style on your son. I get a chuckle out of the coaches who say, we're going to wrestle this style or that style. Iowa style, Oklahoma State style used to be talked about a lot back in the day. I wrestled at Oklahoma State, and for the most part, they recruit guys who were already wrestle like them when at all possible. I actually wrestled in college with Randy Couture, and I remember for a solid year or more, they tried to change Randy's style. I remember walking into the shower, and there's Randy hopping over dots, jumping over lines, jumping rope. There's cones. He's hopping around the cones, and I remember thinking, "Oh wow, I'm sure glad I'm not an average athlete like Randy. Look at him. He's got to hop around cones." Well, finally, Randy, I think, got fed up and went back to wrestling the way he wanted to wrestle. And, now he's known as one of the greatest wrestlers of the recent decades, and the first real MMA star, and just an incredible athlete that, even in his mid-40s was fighting on TV and winning. So no one can say he's not a tremendous athlete. But what happens is if you take the wide receiver and put him on the line, the offensive line, he may not make the varsity team, but if you put him back on wide receiver, he might be worth millions of dollars on the professional football field. Whereas, in wrestling, we can't put kids in a position based upon their wrestling or their type of athleticism and body type, but let the wrestler develop his own style that suits his needs. And this is something we do a very good job of, especially in the high school academy and in our elite room, is trying to help kids to develop a style of wrestling that fits their needs. So that's something to keep in mind also. And another thing is, number 3 is give your son the tools necessary. Get him the training. Buy an instructional wrestling video. Skip one of those so-called national tournaments and buy a home wrestling mat and get his workout partner over there and practice. Or if your son needs to lift weights, maybe dad, you can say, hey son, let's go lift weights, and twice a week you and your son go lift weights and help him to get the tools, whether it's a technique area or maybe it's strength or who knows what it is. But if your son doesn't have the tools, oftentimes in wrestling I've had dads who say, what did my son do wrong? And I go, he didn't do anything wrong. They go, well, he lost. I go, didn't do anything wrong. The other kid's better. Your son hasn't wrestled long enough yet. The other kid's more mature. There's a whole host of reasons. Certainly if there are technique issues or maybe mental areas that I can help with, we certainly do that. But sometimes, if you can't bench press 250 pounds, it doesn't mean you didn't try, or that you don't have any heart, or that you're not a tough kid, or that you're a wimp, or that your dad needs to yell at you. You're not ready to bench 250 pounds yet. It's going to take a couple years, but you're trying to bench a little bit more each week, and that's part of it. And wrestling's much the same way. Another thing, number 4, is be very supportive of your son. He needs you after he loses, not after he wins. And generally what happens is we're happy and supportive after our kids win, but some of us are not after they lose, and that's very sad. So, your son wants to win. I'm just going to tell you, your son is probably not going to be the Olympic champion. I hate to break it to you, but it's probably not going to happen. So you just need to kind of get over it and be supportive, and hopefully in the end he can accomplish all of his goals, or at least if he comes very, very close, then it was successful. I train our kids to look at their success as different chapters. Wrestling is one chapter in your life. Your grades, if you win the Olympic title and then you're living under a bridge hooked on drugs, are you successful? I would say no. So, the other chapters in your life can all add up so that you can look back one day on all the big chapters of your life, including your wrestling career, and hopefully you have a lot of success there. Even though you may, or you probably for sure will fall short in some of those chapters, it's just normal. So be realistic in that area, and be very supportive of your son when he loses. And there's a good saying: we don't lose, we learn. And if you take that approach and help your son, I think it's going to be a wonderful thing. The last thing we can do is maybe do a little personal evaluation, and this is for those few dads or moms who get emotionally tied up in their son's winning and losing. This is very bad. You should never do that. If my son loses, it's his loss. If he wins, it's his win. If you don't like your son's opponent's parents, that has nothing to do with it. If you don't like the coach, who cares? It's nothing to do about it. Just because someone beats my son doesn't mean they beat me. You should not get emotionally tied up. Sometimes we do, and try to stay out of that aspect of it. And if you are someone who just can't help it, but you're just very tough on your son, you're going to ruin him, and he's going to hate wrestling and probably have resentment towards you. But sometimes what could help is we might need as parents to look in the mirror and say, do I have 10% body fat? What's in my bank account? What's my retirement plan look like? How much time do I donate to the church? How much money do I give to the church? How much time do I spend with my husband, wife, or kids? I mean, we can look down the whole list of areas. I mean, are you the state champion math teacher, or the state champion bricklayer, or the national champion dentist or insurance salesman? Probably not. So, maybe we can lead by example a little bit, and maybe we could be super successful in many, many, many areas. And then our kids can look at us and want to have success because of the example we set, rather than us trying to have success through them.